take my hand. I'm inviting you to understand. I'll take it.
Today we've got a fine Argentinian Malbec.
Just as soon as I write one more for you, a song about your head.
I've been in a service industry role for many, many years. Most of my working life has been in service industry related jobs, including 10 years in the restaurant business early on from my college days and beyond. And I've been very close to the industry, to the restaurant industry, because quite frankly I just dine out so frequently. I've become friendly with a lot of folks who make their living serving the public, and for many, many years I've been listening to their stories. And finally, one day, after coming away from a restaurant and listening to some outlandish story from a server, light bulb went off, or something went off in my brain to just say, I've got to do something about this. I've got to get the word out to the general public who are on the other side of the bar, the other side of the guest check, and the other side of the book, and let them know what life is like from a server's perspective. In 2006, I decided to take on this project of collecting information from current and former servers. I did it in the form of a questionnaire to start. To date, I've received over 200 responses from current and former servers, not only restaurant, but every industry where workers interact with customers. It's really important for me that this is not a personal memoir. It's a collection of service industry related workers' stories. And it's an ongoing dialogue and a conversation with the public and workers. There was a writer in the 70s, his name was George Plimpton. They called him a participatory journalist. He actually would take on the role of, for instance, he was a quarterback for the Detroit Lions in their preseason. So he was able to report his experience as a quarterback in the huddle of the Detroit Lions. He always wondered what they said in the huddle and what the interaction was between the quarterback and the rest of the team, and what it was like, what that feeling was like. He was an inspiration as a participatory journalist. There are some parallels between what he did and what I'm doing. After I started with this project, there was also a book recommended to me that's called Working by Studs Terkel, and he wrote, essentially it's a Bible about working Americans. He did in-depth interviews with 130 or more workers across America. The subtitle of Terkel's project was People Talk About What They Do All Day Long and How They Feel About What They Do. And that really struck a nerve with me, because I watch the way customers interact with servers, and some of the condescending, elitist, demeaning behavior that accompanies the interaction between a customer and a server just really cut to the core with me. And that was part of a significant part of the reason why I'm working on this project. I don't think anyone can argue with the godfather of service, if you will, in terms of how important that service is. One of my contentions is that service is about execution, and that hospitality is more about the culture that you engender, the experience that you have, and the interaction you have with the guest, hopefully making it a meaningful and memorable experience with a guest. It's not just about serving things in a particular sequence. If the nature of your question is around whether or not the customer has been placed on too high a pedestal and the customer should be pleased at all costs, I disagree with that premise. Obviously, that harkens back to the customer being always right, and I would even put a subtitle in that, or parentheses around no matter what. And I, again, wholeheartedly disagree with that premise, because bad customers are bad for morale of your staff, They're bad for the experience of other guests. You can call it collateral damage. And many times managers or servers won't know how to mitigate the circumstances around that really bad behavior. And sometimes that means taking it all the way to the extreme of what I call, I'm not the first one to coin this phrase, but firing the customer. Sometimes firing the customer is imperative for the trust that you have with your employees, because if an employee comes up to a manager and lets them know some abusive or abhorrent behavior that occurred with their interaction with a customer, and the manager backs the customer instead of the employee, the trust that you have in your staff, and your staff has in you, is eroded considerably, to the point where I know for a fact that many servers and bartenders and workers have left their employ because they didn't have the support of their management. Customers, in some instances, in some workplaces, are put on a pedestal that's too high, and it can have a detrimental impact on your business and on your relationship with your employees.
Thanks a million jillion. Lights out.
This morning I went to Charlie's Sandwich Shop, Columbus Ave. It's an institution in Boston. Food is old school, great diner grub, if you will, and I love a greasy spoon. Lunch, I would probably opt for the messy burger at Toro restaurant in the South End. Toro is famous for the grilled corn, and they have an aioli that goes over it that's just amazing. And they serve the same aioli on a simple burger, and you can order it extra messy. So they'll put in extra, they'll slather on extra sauce. For dinner, I would probably opt for Neptune Oyster in the North End. It's arguably, well, it's always in the discussion with the top 3 seafood restaurants in Boston. They do a crudo that's fantastic. They do daily specials. They source everything really, really well. And it's a mom and pop shop, which those are the type of restaurants that I would root for and enjoy. What this is really about is the bigger picture of just people interacting with each other every day, hopefully exhibiting more common courtesy, civility, mutual respect. Greg Reeves would say, after we would share stories that happened to us or to other services, as Greg would always say, it's not that hard. It truly shouldn't be that hard to be respectful of one another and to exhibit some common courtesy and mutual respect. It really, really shouldn't. My goal is to raise the level of awareness between customers and workers. This isn't about only exposing the negative. I've actually bought the domain names Customer Hall of Shame and Customer Hall of Fame. So a significant percentage of my time is spent about highlighting tremendous customers and the behaviors that they exhibit when they engage with workers and with each other. I love people in general. Sometimes there's a jaded optimism about my approach to interacting with people, because I've seen the way people can be in the horrific way, the demeaning, condescending, elitist way that people can treat workers. So I'm on the lookout for that, but I'm also on the lookout for great people, great interactions with workers and with each other that I want to include in the story as well. One of the things that really inspires me is working people in general. The subculture of workers who serve the public really inspires me. There's a camaraderie between workers that is really, really strong. And I really like interacting with people who are on the other side, if you will, in terms of the workers. And I really like the trust that they've bestowed in me to share their stories. There are stories that they can't tell because they got fired, or there's ways that they'd like to interact with a customer that they can't because the customer is always right. The fact that I can advocate for those workers is really, really important to me. And also having a mission that I'm deeply committed to. is something that really inspires me. I've worked a lot of different jobs in my life, and having a mission that I'm so adamant about being part of is really, really important. The mission inspires me.
I'm feeling like a young again. Mind the wandering, heart of pounding on us by the signs of